Hi, boys and girls. I'm here to read Humphrey's School Fair Surprise. Does anybody know what a fair might be? So in a fair, there might be bouncy houses, there might be cotton candy, lots of fun, good treats, maybe some rides. So we're gonna find out what happens in this book. And this book was written by Betty G. Burney, and it's illustrated by Priscilla Burris. And we're gonna find out what happens. This book has 5 chapters. And here are the 5 chapters. And today I'm going to be reading chapter 1. And chapter 1 is surprising news. Wonder what the news could be. All right, here we go. Surprising news. I've learned a lot about school in the short time I've lived in one. As a classroom hamster, I get to see and hear everything that goes on in room 26. One thing I've learned is that it's important to listen to our teacher, Mrs. Brisbane. She is super smart. She's a good teacher, too. I've also learned that it's important to listen to Mr. Morales, the principal. Mr. Morales is the most important person at Longfellow School. One Monday when he came into our classroom, he said something very important. It was also quite surprising. As you know, class, the Longfellow School Fair is coming up on Saturday, he said. My friends got very excited. Will there be cotton candy? Heidi Hopper asked. She forgot to raise her hand. I think of her as raise your hand, Heidi, because Mrs. Brisbane always has to remind her to do it. Mr. Morales smiled. I think so, he said. AJ remembered to raise his hand, and Mr. Morales called on him. Will there be cupcakes? AJ asked. AJ's voice is very loud, so I call him Lower Your Voice AJ. Mr. Morales said there would be cupcakes. And there's Mr. Morales, the principal, with Mrs. Brisbane. There would also be games and crafts and things that sounded like hamsterific fun. Yippee! I shouted. Of course, all that my friends heard was a very loud squeak. This year we're adding something new, Mr. Morales told us, and everyone will be part of it. There's Humphrey saying, yippee! Are you listening, Og? I squeaked to my neighbor. Og is a frog. He lives in a tank right next to my cage on a long table by the window. Since I can't see his ears, I'm never sure if he's listening or not. Boing, boing, he answered in his funny voice. I guess he really was listening. During the fair, each class will march around the playing field, Mr. Morales said. Ooh, my classmates said. You'll all make signs that will show what makes room 26 special, Mr. Morales explained. There will be a prize given for the best class spirit. Ooh, my classmates said again. Do you think room 26 will win the prize? Mrs. Brisbane asked the class. Every student shouted, yes, including me. Og splashed around in the water side of his tank. After Mr. Morales left, I was so happy I hopped on my wheel for a fast spin. I should have listened to the teacher, but I couldn't stop thinking about the school fair. There he is, spinning really fast. Og and I were alone during recess. The fair sounds great, doesn't it? I asked. Boing, boing, Og answered. Cupcakes sound yummy, and games are fun, I squeaked. Boing, boing, Og said. I just have one question, Og. What is a school fair? I asked. Og dived into the water and swam away from my cage. I guess he didn't know what a school fair was either. There's Og. But I wasn't worried. I knew I'd find out very soon. My friends were all talking when they came back to the classroom. I heard them say some very odd things. Beanbags, Garth said. Gail giggled and shouted, sponges! Gail loves to giggle, but I had never heard her laugh about sponges before. Saye, who hardly ever speaks, smiled and said, face painting. There we are, 3 friends talking. Class, we have work to do, Mrs. Brisbane said. We need to think about our signs. What do you think makes our class special? Lots of hands went up. We learned a lot of important things in room 26, Mandy said. I agreed with that. I'd even learned to read and write in room 26, which is unusual for a hamster. We've got the best teacher, Richie said. That made Mrs. Brisbane smile. But other classes have nice teachers and learn a lot, she said. Is there anything that sets this class apart from the others? Miranda Golden raised her hand. I think of her as Golden Miranda because of her golden hair. We have the nicest students, she said with a smile. She was right. I was lucky to be in a class with such nice humans. Here's a different way to look at it, Mrs. Brisbane said. What do we have that no other class has? I looked around the room. There was a colorful bulletin board with pictures of important people on it. I didn't know who they were, but I was sure they were important. I looked some more and saw books, pencils, papers, and maps. My friends glanced around the room too. Suddenly, Heidi said, Humphrey! She forgot to raise her hand again. We were looking around. Then AJ shouted, and Og! The class was buzzing with excitement. Mrs. Brisbane clapped her hands to quiet everyone down. Quiet, please, she said. I agree. No other class has a hamster like Humphrey and a frog like Og. Should we use them on our signs? I was too surprised to squeak up, but my classmates all cheered. Even Og said, boing. We will start working on them tomorrow, said Mrs. Brisbane. The end. All right, that's the end of chapter 1. Next chapter is called Busy, 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 and we'll find out what happens tomorrow.